But in talking about those technical terms, of course, what I'm not talking about and can't speak from the position of are the people who are most directly suffering at the hands of this violence. And I'm speaking about the Palestinian, Israeli, and Lebanese civilians who have not made any decisions to be part of this violence, and yet their daily lives have been affected by this violence.
All right, so here's my problem with this. He did not mention the hostages. The first group that he mentioned was the Palestinians who are being armed by this. Again, not taking any kind of responsibility for their actions. He starts with the Palestinians, where really the ones that are suffering the most are the hostages.
I mean, my job here is not to convince you that I'm right about anything. It's really to try to help us have a conversation about the power and the importance of the words that we use.
All right, so Mr. Pensky here starts with, it's not his job to convince you about his opinion. So I didn't realize that he's just teaching his opinion and not actually education, historical facts, and stuff that are real, not just opinions. And another point is he actually mentioned that words are important, and this will come to become a little more important in a few moments.
Again, my job is not to tell you yes or no. I'm not sure even I know what I feel or think about the question. What I do think is that it's not, for me anyway, the fundamental question. Because the difference between genocide, crimes against humanity, and war crimes, as Kerry just said, is not gravity. It is this very specific set of these two requirements that were built into the Genocide Convention in 1948 for some really historically and geopolitically specific reasons. The one is this notorious requirement to prove special intent.
Indeed, Mr. Pensky here is correct. You have to show intent.
It is also utterly clear to me that massive ongoing atrocity crimes have occurred and continue to occur in the treatment of the Palestinians in Gaza. And we can talk about other areas like the West Bank and southern Lebanon later if we want. But the Netanyahu government and the IDF have completely violated their international obligations to protect Palestinian civilians in Gaza.
That's a lie. In this segment, Mr. Pensky is shifting, and he's starting to talk about absolutes and how is, in his opinions, the Netanyahu government and the IDF, notice how he switched from the Israeli government to the Netanyahu government as if there's a difference. There's no difference. Netanyahu is a democratically elected prime minister of Israel. And later on, he then completes his thought and says that he's completely sure that Israel is doing atrocities in Gaza. He then, for some reason, decides to talk about Lebanon as if Israel has anything to do with Lebanon. And in fact, Lebanon has been attacking Israel for the past 9 months on a daily basis, targeting civilians' population with rockets and missiles. He does not say that.
So the reality of atrocities occurring in Gaza is undisputed to me. Now, so I'm not telling you what to think, but I am suggesting that we think about beyond that polarity.
Here he says that the reality of atrocities occurring in Gaza is undisputed. Notice the words that he's using, undisputed. And then he adds that it's his, at least that's what he thinks. So we have to think here, is this what he thinks? Or is this what he knows and he's telling it as the director of the Center for Genocide and Atrocities at Binghamton University? Is it just an opinion? What is going on? These students, they listen to this director or co-director, and they think that his words are in stone.
Whether regarding Hamas and its attacks on Israel, or Israel's attacks on Palestinians and Hamas in Gaza, when are they justified? what can justify whether a history of oppression and persecution and rights deprivation, or a history of attacks on civilians and a need for state security?
So Mr. Pensky here starts with an assertion that there's some sort of a line that is okay. You know, Hamas can go cross the border after there's an official ceasefire and rape, behead, mutilate, all that stuff. And you know, there's a line. Maybe there's a line.
At what point do things get so bad that atrocity crimes end up being justified? So yes or no, are these attacks justified?
And then he goes on about a history of attacks against civilians and all sorts of lies that are absolutely not true. Israel does not attack civilians unless there is something that provokes it. For example, if a rocket is launched from a building, that building is a military target. It's okay by international law to target that building.
Political and military elites are dangerous. Most atrocity crimes involve political and military elites coming up for various reasons with policies that cannot be executed but for the slaughter of civilian populations. They find themselves justifying it to themselves. They are incorrect. Every human being deserves to be protected from state violence, whether it's their own state or that of another. And so in that sense, again, not my job to tell you what to think. But I do want to encourage you, and I think that some of the events that we'll talk about over the next semester will be opportunities to do that, to think about who deserves protection from state violence. My answer is everybody.
What does this segment have anything to do with what happened right now between Israel and Gaza, between Israel and Hamas, between Israel wanting to release their hostages and eliminate Hamas because it is a genocidal organization, and with Hamas in place, there will never be peace in that region.
So you have Palestinian citizens of Israel, right? You have Palestinian refugees in the West Bank and in Gaza who were displaced as a result of 1948 or 1967, those wars, and they are living in refugee camps to this day. You have Palestinians in the diaspora, many of whom are refugees, who are in Arab countries, surrounding Arab countries, either in refugee camps or integrated to some level within the various societies that they're in, be it Lebanon, Syria, Jordan, Egypt, or the Gulf states or others. Gulf states don't have refugee camps. Lebanon, Jordan, Syria, and Egypt have.
Basically, he's talking about refugees that have been refugees for 80 years, and they're living in refugee camps. He talks about them as camps, and guess what the students think? The student thinks that they're living in tents. He thinks that people are, the students actually think that people are living in tents for 80 years. When in fact it's not true. The truth is that these are cities. You know, when they say a refugee camp, you know, whatever, in maybe in Gaza, or, you know, when they say a refugee camp, this and this name, they don't mean tents. They mean you know, cities, and some of them are very nice cities, quite the luxurious cities. And if you don't believe me, look it up.
And so, and then you have Palestinian diaspora that have integrated into various countries around the world. So you have a lot of different voices and different experiences that directly affect how they see their own history, their own national history, and how it's developed. Okay, and so for many Palestinians, I would probably say the vast majority of them, they see their history, their narrative as one of systemic oppression, denial of identity, and an inability to exercise basic sovereignty and basic self-determination.
nobody is preventing anybody from identifying as whatever they want. That is purely a lie. And in fact, Gaza had full self-autonomy, right? They could have done whatever they want. In fact, there's a lot of videos showing the life of Gaza just before October 7th. And people would be surprised, but they lived quite in a high quality of life. I would say even luxury. Same goes to the West Bank. Basically, the Palestinians that live in the Palestinian cities in the West Bank, they are governed autonomously by the Palestinian Authority. They have their own police, they have their own, they have everything their own. Really, it's a complete separation.
Right? This has been a systemic situation since World War I in the Middle East and post, with the creation of the Palestine Mandate, and then with the creation of the State of Israel in the war of 1948. You have massive dislocations, forced migrations, and refugee status.
Here, Mr. Schull is talking about World War I, or at least the aftermath of it, which basically created the League of Nations. And the League of Nations basically gave the British the mandate to control the land that is called Palestine, which was under the rule of the Ottomans before, which would be Turkey. So at that point, the British had a problem. What did they do with this land? And they had a few solutions. And one of the solutions was to divide the land 20% to the Jewish population and 80% to the local Arab population. And what happened was that the Arab population did not want a Jewish state next to them. And because they did not want to share the land with their Jewish neighbors, this plan was basically dropped. It's important to add that before the British came up with this kind of plan, the local Arabs were under the Turkish rule. They never had a country. There was never a country called Palestine.
Their narrative is that why are they treated as differently as every other Palestinian, as every other refugee? There's a different UN organization just for Palestinian refugees versus one for everyone else. That the laws of refugee status do not apply to them in the same way that they do to every other displaced person in the world today. Forcibly displaced person in the world today. Why are there two pathways? This is just a fact. You can go to the UNHCR, you can go to UNRWA, and you can see these differences.
This is actually something very important that Mr. Schull is saying. Why is there two different organizations, one for every single refugee in the world and another just for the Palestinian refugee issue? And I agree, that's not okay. There should be one.
These are parts of their narrative. That there's been a systemic oppression and a denial of their ability to have self-determination in where they see as their homeland.
So Mr. Schull here is basically is saying a story of what basically the Palestinians are saying, right? But how come he doesn't counter it? Because it's very easy to counter it. There were multiple attempts at getting to a peaceful solution to the issue, and at each one of them, the Palestinians were the one to reject the offers. So really, the real issue here is that the Palestinians simply, and I'm not saying it in absolutes. We're talking about as a group. That as a group, they simply don't want a neighboring Jewish state.
So there are these are real narratives. I don't speak for Palestinians, please. I'm not trying to do this, but these are narratives that come out from their words. And then you have extremist narratives like what Shay had talked about on Israeli side or Jewish side. You have those among the Palestinian side. The extremes of Hamas, which in their charter calls for the destruction of Jews.
So Hamas is calling for the destruction of Jews in their charter. It's not just Israel, it's Jews in general. So we're talking about here, what this panel doesn't understand is this is not necessarily a war of land, but it is a religious war as it pertains to Hamas and the Gazans. The Gazans are predominantly Hamas supporters. They elected Hamas. Polls have shown that there is a majority support for Hamas even till now.
Other narratives within the Palestinian population are those of when is enough enough? And many peoples, as we know in the world today, who have been marginalized, who do not get access to rights that they deserve as human beings under international law, have exercised an enormous array of techniques, tactics, in order to achieve those rights, from boycott, from violence, from peaceful demonstrations, from working through systems and trying to collapse systems. We have lots of examples in the world today of peoples who have attempted to get their own self-determination or get the rights that they deserve as human beings. Lots of examples in the United States and others, right? From rights to vote, reproductive rights, to the issues of the civil rights campaign, and you have a spectrum of tactics.
So here Mr. Schull is doing a little bit of something insincere. He's doing like an intersectional comparison between the struggles of the poor Palestinians and voting rights or other stuff that do not pertain at all to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. In fact, it's kind of funny because the Gazans did not vote since 2006. So I don't know. It's kind of funny.
Have the systematic denial of identity of Palestinians even in Israel today. Palestinian Israelis, Palestinian citizens of Israel, are called Arab.
That's because they are Arab Israeli. What does he think they are? They're not Norwegian, right? They are from Arab descent. There's nothing wrong with that.
The Palestinians could have had a country 20 years ago if Arafat agreed to the agreement. They got 97% of the land they wanted. They got half of Jerusalem, by the way.
I was the one to say that.
So,
And Arafat said no, and they rejected that, and they went to another intifada.
Okay.
so I'm happy to kind of dismantle some of those myths because there's a lot of them that are myths.
Here, Mr. Schull is happy to dismantle some of those myths, but he is completely wrong. Everything I just said was 100% correct.
The notion of, and there's a lot of great work that's been done about the War 48, what the intents of the different states that entered into that war, Jordan, Lebanon, Egypt, Iraq, Syria, all had different motivations and did different types of things. You have to, it's just not a blanket statement.
I'm just saying that happened.
Those countries did not have all kinds of motivations. Yes, they wanted to probably take over a piece of the land and call it their own, but their first priority was to get rid of the Jews.
This notion that the 2000 Ehud Barak at Camp David, what you referred to as the Palestinians could have had a state 20 years ago, there was nothing in writing that Ehud Barak actually gave Arafat. It was all, just trust me. So, this comes out from the...
I don't trust you. You know who I trust?
No, that's fine. That's fine.
I trust Bill Clinton in his own words. In his own words, saying Arafat left the table.
We're good. We're good because so we don't agree on these facts because they're not facts from your side.
I will send you stuff, okay?
Oh, I know all of that.
Apparently you don't know. Apparently you don't know.
And Hamas is really smart. When they decide to rocket Israel, they insinuate themselves in the hospitals, in the schools, in the highly populous areas, and they are smart. So they try. So they wait. They try to put the Israelis in a position of either not defending themselves or killing innocents. They're good at it. They're smart. They've been doing this a long time. Look, I don't agree I killed myself to give the Palestinians a state. I had a deal they turned down that would have given them all of Gaza, all of Gaza, between 96 and 97% of the West Bank, compensating land in Israel, you name it.
Do you agree that the Israeli government, as well as the U.S., are part of the problem as well?
Well, I think that the problem predates October 7th, and I think that's what President Obama was talking about, because let's remember, this is a very long and complicated history.
Yeah.
My husband, with the Israeli government at the time in 2000, offered a Palestinian state to the Palestinians, at that time run by Arafat, Yasser Arafat.
The PLO.
And the PLO, the Palestinian Liberation Organization, which, by the way, took out of its charter violence against Israel. So you got to separate the Palestinians who believe that there is some future of peace with Hamas, which believes it has to destroy Israel.
Yes.
Those are two different organizations,
Right.
and they have to be viewed in that way. Arafat turned that down. There would have been a Palestinian state now for 23 years if he had not walked away from it. There was another attempt when I was Secretary of State to try to, bring the Palestinians and the Israelis together. That didn't work out. Israel left Gaza in 2005, and forcibly ejected 50,000 Israelis who were living in Gaza. They left all of their infrastructure. They had a big infrastructure of greenhouses where they were supplying fruits, vegetables, flowers, etc. And the Palestinians deserved to have a productive, successful economy in Gaza. Hamas came in and basically destroyed all of that and